Hello, class. This is the last in our discussion of Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations. And please, as you watch this, section 10 of the essay, even though it is the conclusion, very much functions as a conclusion that you would write for your essays, in that it sort of brings together these last sort of ideas. Please watch the video on section 9 if you want to really understand the key thesis statement, Coates' key point of his essay. So with that, how does the essay end? So let's start and analyze the last section of Coates' essay. So question would be, why do you think Coates brings up the case of German reparations? For those of you who don't know, West Germany at the time, did a series of reparations for the Holocaust done in conjunction with the State of Israel. And Coates uses this example of German reparations for a couple of key reasons, a couple of big reasons. First, I think he wants to show that the idea of Germany providing reparations for the Holocaust faced similar levels of distrust, rejection, and outrage that one would encounter if one brings up the idea of US reparations for slavery. He goes and provides data where he describes how much of the German populace felt that they were not involved, felt that they had no need to provide reparations for it, felt that only those people directly responsible for the Holocaust should be the only ones held accountable for it, and that there was also similar levels of rejection on the side of the Jewish people in Israel, who viewed that by having something so similar, so tidily finished as the idea of reparations would somehow absolve the German people and absolve Germany as a whole from its sort of debt of the Holocaust as a nation. So Coates shows that on both sides of the debate, there was a lot of distrust and rejection, and people very, very much against this idea of reparations for the Holocaust. As he continues to tell you this story of the Holocaust, he shows that despite the outrage and resistance, as the reparations accord was signed, as things were agreed upon, as it came together, that what he believes was that this notion of Germans' reparations for the Holocaust had a healing effect on Germany as a whole in a country. It allowed them to reckon with the debt that their ancestors had done, that they had paid, and allowed Germany as a country to begin to deal with this with an unflinching eye and begin to try and eradicate notions of anti-Semitism from its country, which of course is not a perfect process. I don't think he would say that this worked, but I think Coates would definitely say, as he quotes the word of expert Tom Segvev, that the reparations had an indisputable psychological and political importance of official government recognition of their past and desire to never have that as an official part of the government moving forward. So even if we were to point at present-day Germany now, you might point and say, well, there are still examples of anti-Semitism. Coates would say, well, yes, of course, but those are no longer enshrined in official forms of government. And in fact, the official form of government with the statement of reparations have essentially recognized that. And much like we talked about in section 9, had an apology without the acceptance of forgiveness. An apology that recognized damages and attempted to, in however small a way possible, not just apologize for actions, but provide recompense for those actions. So Coates says that the reparations for the Holocaust allowed Germany as a whole to have a great reckoning with itself and begin to address their own history and work to become a better, less racist country. And he gives this up to show that this idea of reparations on a huge international level faced resistance, overcame that resistance, and, as many experts show, had lasting political and psychological benefits for everyone involved, including the Germans themselves. So this is a big scale proof where Coates says, for people saying that there's just no way we could do reparations, there's no way it could be done, Coates is saying, well, if the country of West Germany at the time, Germany now, could do this for the Holocaust, it seems pretty silly to say then that the US could not do this for slavery. If something that bridged international gaps could be done on this level, why can't the US begin to at least contemplate the idea of doing it on just a national level? So if Germany can do it, why can't the US? Would be Coates's reasoning, and one of the main reasons why he uses this example of German reparations to prove this point. So as Coates brings his essay to a close, he uses the example of Black Wall Street, which he has brought up in other sections of the essay. As I've mentioned in a previous video, if you want to find a visual artistic presentation of what happened in Black Wall Street, the opening to the new HBO series, The Watchmen, begins the entire series with this attack on Black Wall Street, and one which you could probably find on YouTube. So anyway, Black Wall Street was the race riot in Tulsa in 1921 that led to widespread destruction and violence and murder. And Coates describes the act of a lawsuit that was brought against the city. And he describes this lawsuit, which, even though it was not successful in earning money, did force a commission authorized by the Oklahoma legislature, the government, to create a report affirming that the riot happened, confirming what happened, the damages, the deaths, knowledge of which had been suppressed for years. So even if this lawsuit was not effective in earning remuneration for the damages done for the survivor of the attack on Black Wall Street, at the very least, it forced people in the Oklahoma government, the state government, to recognize that this was a part of their state's history, that this happened. And if we recognize that it happens, that can be a first step in trying to develop a plan for reparations, right? And so Oklahoma here is given to you as a miniature production of what could happen with issues of reparation on a national scale, right? Now, no one, very few people can deny that slavery happened. It's a fact. But what Coates is saying, that without a sort of official knowledge and official reports, you can find a lot of disambiguous information about slavery, some of which tries to minimize its impact, whitewash it, say that it was not such a bad thing. This is stuff that was enshrined in legal textbooks at the time. And one of the things that reparations would do would help to make that a living, real part of American history. It would allow people to see the facts of slavery, to recognize those facts, and to really, really, really come to grips with them. Just like what happened in Oklahoma with the destruction of Black Wall Street, that this report forced the people of Oklahoma, forced the people of Tulsa to recognize that this event happened and to recognize the severity and damage that it caused. And finally, Coates ends his essay with information about Wells Fargo. All right. So this might be a bit confusing for first-time readers of his essay, in that we have this long-form piece, very detailed, very, very thoroughly written, that seems to end not with the most dramatic punch, to not end with the clearest articulation of his ideas. And so I would ask you to remember that sections 8 and 9 is where Coates really presents you his opinion of why reparations is something that should be done. All right, not just to make fair and equitable remunerations for damages done to African Americans, but to also allow the United States to begin to reckon with its problems of race as opposed to ignoring them. So by the time we get to section 10, Coates has said everything he wants to say about the case for reparations. So he's going to leave you with one more piece of evidence of the quiet plunder of African Americans. He's going to leave you with one more sort of evidence and facts to underscore the damage done under the pirate flag of white supremacy. So instead of ending on his opinion, he wants you, the reader, to end with reality. So he used the example of Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo in the 2000s targeted African Americans with exploitative subprime loans, focusing on African American churches. So, real quick, subprime loans might be a confusing topic, but essentially, if you can't get a mortgage for your house through quote unquote normal means, there was time, especially in the mid to early 2000s, where you would get a subprime loan. These are very exploitative loans with high amounts of interest because the person doing a subprime loan would be considered high risk, right? So in many ways, think of subprime loans as on-contract buying by a different name. So the subprime loan example is Coates trying to tell you, here's what happens without reckoning and recognizing the racial disparities and racial exploitation that has gone on in this country, is that on-contract buying, so people say it's bad. People like the Contract Buyers League forces change. And so what happens, instead of fully recognizing that this was an exploitative practice that targeted African Americans, on-contract buying transforms into subprime loans. On-contract buying by a different name. So Jim Crow laws by a different name, targeting African Americans. And he uses examples of incredibly racist language found within the Wells Fargo descriptions of how to target these African American communities with these bad loans that people knew there was going to be a high chance that they could not repay and that the land would be foreclosed on. So much so that he says that in Baltimore, we have large swaths of foreclosed empty homes that were done through subprime loans that targeted, again, African American communities. So this is the last example he gives you to show you that without a true reckoning, this can happen. Without a case for reparations, we will have to adjust and attack these moments of racial exploitation again and again and again, because we will never truly begin to understand the role racial exploitation and white supremacy played within the creation and history of America. The sort of lasting image I would leave you with is you've probably all seen the meme of the dog drinking coffee saying this is fine as the house burns down. That is essentially Coates's suggestion of the way that racism without a true reckoning of what was done will continue in the United States. That we will not be able to fully embrace and understand the damages done without bringing those damages to light and doing something about them. And so that's why he leaves you with this last example of how the game of racial exploitation, the pirate flag of quiet plunder, will continue unless we have a case for reparations. This concludes our discussion of Ta-Nehisi Coates' essay. Please make sure, if you need to download and read the PowerPoints and the videos, all of which can be found on our class's Blackboard.